And so I started looking into using Resolve as an editing platform and was pleasantly surprised, mostly with the fact that it wasn't crashing every hour. And then, of course, yeah, it was free. I mean, once you paid for it, you have it forever. And another huge thing was the GPU integration. So it played the footage back way faster than Premiere did. And I think Premiere's caught up with this last release that they just barely put out. But for the last couple of years, like we shoot on these Canons, Canon RAW didn't play back in Premiere at all. We'd have to make proxies. And on my laptop here, it was just like a hot knife through butter. It was awesome. So, okay. So some other pros with Resolve is obviously the stability. If you don't want to buy the studio version, which has like some advanced features such as like noise reduction and some other like of the newer features, the free version gets you about 90% of the way there. So if you don't know if you want to like jump into Resolve, definitely just download the free version, give it a whirl. You'll be pleasantly surprised, I'm sure. And if you want to, you know, start getting like crazy with the nodes, I think you get a handful of nodes, which is the different like ways you do color correction. If you're not doing anything totally wild, the like at a professional level, the free version will get you most of the way there. And then, like everyone has said, once you want to go to the studio version, I think it's like $395. I don't know if it's changed lately. $295. There you go. It's cheaper. You buy it once and you don't have to buy it again. In fact, that computer over there has like a physical dongle that they used to make you buy like 10 years ago, and it still works with the newest versions. So they're good on their word for that. And so if you want to kick that monthly subscription payment to the curb, this is definitely the way to do it. Another cool thing, I guess I can open it here. Let me grab the audio out of here while I'm talking. How many of you use other Adobe apps like Audition or After Effects? By raise of hand. You guys use other stuff? Okay. So another cool thing about Resolve is all that's built in to one program. And so it really helps keep you from bouncing, like closing one app or having a bunch of apps open. You can do it all in Resolve. Now Resolve's effects program is node-based, so it's quite a bit different than After Effects, and I have spent 20 years in After Effects, so I refuse to learn the effects program. But that said, it is very effective and it's really powerful for effects. That's not my specialty. Okay, can you guys see the UI okay? Okay. They just released a new version, version 20, which is in beta. It's public beta. So you can get the free version or you can get the studio version. So the studio version is the paid version. There's a bunch of really cool new additions. A lot of them are AI focused. I'm not going to go over those today because I personally haven't checked them out yet, but the demos online are pretty astonishing, especially the ability to like track and roto out objects using machine learning. It's pretty wild because in my day you had to like literally draw around each frame by frame by frame for days, and you would literally go crazy. Some other benefits is this is the industry standard for color correction to a certain degree. It's not like Hollywood level, but for independent film and producers at our level anyways, it's pretty much the industry standard. I would never color correct anything in Premiere. It also saves in real time, so rather than having an autosave or remembering to save, everything you do pretty much gets saved as you do it, kind of like a web-based platform. So that's kind of neat. So if it does crash, which is a lot more rare than Premiere, you just fire it back up and you're back off to the races. Rarely have I lost anything that's been detrimental, unless it was a combination of somebody else deleting something and saving it and not knowing about it for a couple days, which they have put in some precautions now that you can go back. So that's pretty cool. Another thing I really like about Resolve is it has a really nice collaboration with other editors. So there's been times where I've had a client making edits at their office and I'm at my house color correcting it as they're editing, which is really cool. Or doing graphics and dropping those in, like I'll be color correcting the timeline and they'll be dropping in updated graphics. So, or they can be working on completely separate timelines. It's just really nice to have that integration. I'm sure Premiere probably has some of that now, but I haven't really looked back into that yet. And then remote work is also, like I said, if you want to take it to another location, that they have a built-in cloud function that does cost a little bit of money, but you can host all your proxies in the cloud. And so I have my partner, I'll keep all the masters on my drive and I'll work off of those. Those will generate smaller like web proxies that will go up to the cloud, and then he can edit at home, and his edits will be happening on my timeline in real time. And if he uploads like a temp music track or a graphic or something, like a stock footage, it will just show up in my timeline because it goes up to the cloud and comes back down. It's really neat. There's also a bunch of other new kind of features, like you can have like a real-time collaboration with a client where they can log in to like an iPad app or a web page and they can see your viewer in real time, so you can like hit play and it'll be like a YouTube Live-esque type of thing, and they can leave comments on the timeline and it will show up as markers on your timeline, which is pretty cool. I'm getting off into the weeds. But anyway, I'm a big fan of Resolve. I haven't looked back to Premiere. I can still use Premiere. They're pretty interchangeable once you get used to it. So it's not like you're gonna forget how to use Premiere. Some cons with Resolve is it doesn't have some of the AI features that Premiere has. Like right now, Premiere will do AI-based like extensions, like if a clip cuts, you can add a few more frames. Everything I think that it doesn't have is kind of gimmicky anyways, so I'm not really hung up on that. It's not part of the Creative Cloud family, obviously, so the UI looks a little different than what you might be used to if you've been using Adobe for 10 years, but it's not hard to overcome. And then I've always used like a visual effects to lock it off and then send it to an effects person, or I do it myself in After Effects, render it out and then import it back. I've never really used the whatever they call it. No, not Fusion. The Adobe, whatever, where you like they like talk to each other. Bridge. Yeah. Anyhow, oh, by the way, I'm gonna wing this after this little list. So if you guys want to yell out, crack jokes, whatever, like let's keep this totally informal, because I hate it when someone just talks for, especially when it's me, for a couple hours. So if I say something and you think of something funny, like please make us all laugh, because this stuff gets boring after a while. The one thing that Adobe has better over this is that it's kind of easy to learn. A lot of people have used Photoshop and other apps by Adobe, so like you kind of feel at home. This feels a little weird at first, but once you wrap your head around how it all works, it's pretty cool. And obviously Adobe's a little more popular right now, but I feel like that is changing. The cons to Adobe, which you guys have already pointed out, is the monthly subscriptions. It adds up and it keeps going up, and they keep raising the price. To me, it's very unstable. It crashed all the time. And then the color correction is lacking. Okay, any questions about anything in life in general? Okay, let's dive into this. So this is kind of your homepage. Some big differences between Premiere and Resolve that you're going to notice right off the bat is Resolve runs off of a database, not a project-specific file. So in Premiere, you would say like, oh, here's my project, and I work on it, and I save it, and there's my project. And then I'm going to say, oh, here's a different version of that project to back it up or whatever. And it's just this file that lives in your project. Everything in Resolve is based on a database. So that database holds all of your projects at all times. It's always saving to that database in real time. And if you need to export a project to share with somebody or to archive, you can still do that, but that's not how this works. And there's 3 different types of databases. So when we go to create a new project, like you can just see here, there's all this crap I have. Can you guys see this up here? Is that too small? It says local. So this is a database that you would store on your hard drive. Obviously that's nice and fast, quick, easy to access. The problem is if that hard drive fails, all of your projects are going to go bye-bye. So you want to make sure you back up that database. And then you can create different databases within that primary database, right? There's also a network database. Now you would think you could save just to like a network drive. That would actually be like a local, but on a network. This is more like a what you would call a post SQL database, and you kind of need to have a little bit of a networking understanding, and you need to have a server that can host an SQL database. And if something goes wrong with that, you need to know how to fix it. So I had a programmer friend who I will call in absolute panic when I was using this, and we'd have to go in like line by line code and figure out what the problem was. This is the older way to do it. The benefits are it saves in real time. You can have multiple people using the same project, and it's completely free as long as you set it up correctly and you're all on a local network working together. So that's cool, but like I said, if you don't understand networking and something goes wonky with it, it's going to be a little more troubling to fix. And then the third type is cloud-based. Now this is back to the subscription problem, but I think it's $5 a month, so it's not a big deal. And this is the best of both worlds. It's saving in real time. Everyone on your group can access it. I think you can invite 20 plus or more people to your cloud. It doesn't cost any more money. They just have to go on Blackmagic's website and sign up for a cloud account. Then you invite them, so you can kick people off if you don't agree with them or whatever, as long as you're the admin. So like, here's all the people who have access to our cloud.
So they can cloud edit if you have the subscription.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
You only have to pay for the subscription, and then the subscriptions go up. It's based on the number of databases you have and the amount of cloud storage you have.
Yeah. So the $5 I don't think includes any cloud storage, or very little. 2 gigabytes.
Yeah. So nothing.
Yeah. But it is fairly affordable to scale up.
2 gigs is the whole project, like, not the.
Yeah.
Not the media.
Just the project.
Yeah.
Scale.
And then if you want to do the media proxies, then it's like maybe $20 a month, but I think that's like 250 gigs, which in proxies is not that much. And then it scales, obviously. Now the cons to having cloud, thank you for,
I'm sorry.
no, please don't stop. Please, everybody, we're all friends, so it's fine. I need a second to breathe. I don't talk this much all day, so this is weird for me. The downside to cloud is that it costs money, and if you don't have internet access, you have to edit locally until you get back, and then you have to do some like finagling to get things up to date. So I'm a big proponent of the cloud. It works really well for our team, our multiple teams, and like I said, I even had clients who had their own cloud that invite me to their cloud, give me the footage, and I can work on it at the same time they are to hit a deadline. Okay, let's see, what other big differences are there? Okay, so let's just do a new project. Oh, so this is where you would create a cloud project. The dialog box is a little different than if it was local. Let's just call this Cutthroat. It asks you where you want to save your project media. I'm just going to put it in this folder. It's fine. Do you want to have multiple users? So if you want, it's just going to be you. That's fine. If you want to have multiple users, you can do that. Then it's going to say, when you import media, do you want to create proxies and upload them to the cloud, or do you want to upload proxies and the originals? And this is kind of where it comes to how much do you want to pay for your cloud space, and how much, or how are you going to use it, right? If you're going to do all the high-end color correction and mastering at the end, and someone else is just going to look at it, like a client or an editor, they just need the proxies. But if you have someone who's going to master it on the other side of the country, then maybe you want to upload the originals, but that's fairly rare. And then allow remote camera access. That's a whole different thing that we're not going to talk about, and I don't even understand it, frankly. So, I don't know what it's thinking about. Okay, the biggest difference between Resolve and Premiere is you have these different, basically, apps or rooms at the bottom. Can you guys see those okay? Mm-hmm. So media is where we would ingest all of our media and kind of organize it. And depending on the project, if it's just a simple, small project for web, you don't really have to get too crazy organizing it. But this is really focused for, or designed for feature films. And if you have shoots by day and you want to get into the metadata and you want to import your ALE files from your DIT, which are just like metadata, and you want to have all that information accurately imported, this is a good spot to do all of that. Let me just kind of show you. Here's my drive. Here's a project we have, productions where our footage lives. And this is like a horror movie that we did a trailer for. So I organize it by reels and then by day, because that's how timecode works, is by day. So you don't want to mix up your source footage, because you won't be able to keep track of timecode because there's the same hours and minutes in every day. And then all of our ARRI LF footage is on these 3 different reels. I want to import all of these, so I'll just right click this ARRI LF, and then it'll give me the option to import the media, and it will just pull out all the video files and put them in one big bin. Or I can keep all the subfolders by selecting this, which I don't want to do. I just want all the shots from that day. So I'm going to do this add media to the bin. And it didn't do anything. That's really neat. Okay, well. Okay, this is asking me if I want to change the project frame rate, and I probably should have talked about this first, so I'm going to hit Don't Change. Premiere allows you to change the frame rates willy-nilly, but once you create your project in your first timeline in Resolve, it's going to make it stay that way. So you really need to know ahead of time what your delivery is going to be. So let's just go over that real quick. Down here on the bottom right is our settings. And this is all of our project settings. So I'm going to be editing in 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080, 24 frames a second. And this is where it was asking me if I wanted to change it. So I'm assuming these are 23. Yeah, these are 23.96. So that would be a problem if you're a purist like I am. So I'm going to go ahead and delete these. I think it's having a hard time because everything's hooked up. Okay, so now if I say import this into the media pool, it says, so the footage is 23.98 frames per second. This project is 24, and it's saying, do I want to change it to match the footage? And I'll say yes. You do need to be careful if you're editing and you want your project to be 23.98, but you start your project by like importing overcranked footage that's like 60 frames or 120 frames. If you're not paying attention, you could jack up what you intended the project to be and not be able to change it. So that's the one word of warning I have for Resolve. Other than that, everything else can be changed. So I'm going to import these other 2 bins, and this will just give us the whole day's worth of footage. And then over here, if we hit this inspect, no, not that. Metadata is what I want. Over here is all the metadata. So this is like the start time code, bit depth. If you have smart lenses, it will tell you the focal length and aperture. And if you're doing special effects, that's super cool. There's actually a ton more options for metadata that are kind of hidden. So if you hit this little down arrow, it'll say, do you want to add tech details or camera details or audio details or everything? So if you hit everything, all of a sudden you'll see there's all this metadata that we can put in. And if you have a DIT on a bigger shoot, they'll give you ALE files, which are like sidecar files that will populate all this with like the scene name, take, and whatever you want them to do. But now you can see it has like, this is the ARRI Alexa Mini LF, the camera serial number, and all this. And this is really cool because later, if you want to like isolate, so one project I was doing, one camera shot to outside where you could see what was going on outside, and the other camera was all lighting. So that didn't change, but the outside shot, the background was changing quite a bit. And so in the edit, if it's metadata tagged, because it says like camera angle, you can say this is camera B, and then you can go in and just select all camera B and create what's called a node, and then make an adjustment. And so you can quickly select all of one camera based off the metadata. Just cool, quick ways to fix something that would normally take you all day. You can be like, oh, just do this camera and change it this way. kind of a nerdy thing. But anyway, this is where you'd go through and kind of just pre-sort and make sure everything's looking good, which it is. Back to the bottom here, this is the cut window. I don't use this at all. I think, do you use this at all?
No.
Yeah. To me, it's like, I understand it to be like Final Cut is on Apple, and Edit's like Premiere is. So that's how I think about it. And I don't use Final Cut anymore, the Final Cut 10. A lot of like news organizations and people who are doing really quick edits love this side of it. I've never touched it, so we're not going to talk about it unless you guys have something to say. I'm all ears.
There is one nice feature that this tool has that is not in the edit page, and this is like super niche. If someone gave you a pre-compile just like an MP4 that has a bunch of different like B-roll clips in it or something like that like you're cutting up or repurposing it, this has something called auto cut detection. So you import the clip and it will detect the scene cuts so that you don't have to go through and like watch the video, oh that's where the cut is or anything like that. So if you're repurposing footage, I will dump it in here, run the auto cut detection, but that's literally the only thing I've ever done here in a decade.
And you can also run that scene detection when you import it into that media bin. And it is super helpful, especially if you're doing what my nightmare story of going from Premiere to Resolve. I had to export like a reference version because I did all these reframes and retimes that the crossover didn't calculate. So I was always A-Bing the two tracks. And when it's just one big track, it is a pain in the butt. So that was a really clutch feature. Okay. Okay, so here's the edit window. We're going to spend most of our time in here, but I'm just going to quickly browse over the rest of these. So again, importing media. If you want to mess with this, go for it. This is like Premiere. And then Fusion's their visual effects program, and it's all node-based. It's a little heady. I don't really understand how to use it well, but when I've watched tutorials online, like done something, like I need to do a quick key on something or a quick retime, I'll look online on how to do it. And it's very effective. I can do it way faster in After Effects because that's what I know. Then there's the color window. We'll spend some time in here tonight. This is where we can really adjust how things look, make your footage, thank you, make your footage pop. Sometimes I'll watch like TV commercials or other people's videos and see shots that are like still in log, like what the camera shoots, and I just want to bang my head against the wall. I'm like, and this looks like crap, and you spent all this time and money. Anyway, and then there's Fairlight. This is their audio. This looks a lot different, this update. This is their audio program. It's much like Audition would be for Adobe. And then Deliver would be like what Media Encoder would be for Adobe. It's a little different, but this is where you do all of your exporting and delivery. And there's a bunch of presets. You can also tie it in to like Vimeo and YouTube and upload directly to it. It does a lot of stuff, but you kind of need to understand how it all works. All right. Okay, let's talk about the UI real quick. We talked about how to import the footage, and that's pretty much the same as Premiere. You can also import it by right-clicking into this bin, much like Premiere, just do import media. We can also organize it by little thumbnails if you want, and if you had the metadata like scene number and take, that would show up here, which is pretty cool. You can also do the proper thumbnails. You can resize them however you want, or you can just do a text list if you don't want to be overwhelmed. And I like, when I go through, I like to see the scene number and take and whatnot. And so I'll move these around so you can, if you right click up here at the top, it will show you all the different types of metadata that we talked about entering. So down here, scene and take, so I can turn that off. And then if you scroll over here, here's scene, so we can drag that over here and take over there. I swear you can do it. Cloud sync is if this is uploading to the cloud, I'll have like a little check. So we didn't slate any of this, but if we were doing a proper production, the audio guy usually types in, or gal types in the scene taken number into the audio file, and then when you sync the audio files, that metadata will port over and it'll all show up there like instantly, which is super cool. So that's kind of how you look at your footage here. You can search. But yeah, one thing about Premiere that you can do is you can create all the windows you want and drag them around and put them wherever you want. Resolve doesn't let you do that, but I kind of like that it forces you to use this way, because in Premiere I was always opening new bins, and this bin for this and this bin for that, and pretty soon I'd have duplicate bins open, and then maybe you'd open another project and it became messy. Or if you opened up someone else's project, it was a total nightmare to try to figure out what was going on. I like this because it forces you just to stick to their system, and it's actually really quick and really easy to use. So like, this is the media pool on the left. You can see that it's kind of brighter. That means it's on. So I can just click it and it turns it off, right? Same thing with effects. So this is the same as Premiere. You have all your effects quickly just right there. And if you turn them both on, it just divides it in half. I've never really used Index. It comes with a sound library you can download. I'd never use that. And then keyframes, obviously. And then over on our right is kind of more of the metadata. So let's just say let me find a shot that's kind of cool. Sorry if this is scary for anybody. Let's see, this shot was kind of cool. This is a lady doing some witchcraft in her attic. Okay, so it's much like Premiere. You hit, I for in. Let's just say O for out. And then there's a bunch of different ways. Like, some people like to edit with just their hands and be like mark in, play, scrub, out, and then hit like a button with the right hand and drop it in, like insert or overwrite, which are down here. Most people just click and drag it down. And if there was audio, that would have dragged down too. And so that, just put it on your timeline, whatever. You can click and drag it. So if I hit metadata on this clip, it will pull up all the metadata there. So if I have like this different clip, you can see it's changing the metadata. Not really super useful, but if you need it, hey, it's there. And then the inspector is much like double clicking it in Premiere. This is where you'd control all your different little settings. So if you wanted to zoom in and out on this shot, I gotta hover it. So I have this one selected, so I gotta select this one. Now I can zoom in and out on that shot. They're linked together, so you can unlink it. Positions like left and right, rotation, all the same stuff as Premiere. And if you want to reset just one of these, you hit this little twirly, and that's going to reset my rotation. And if I want to reset all of these, I just hit this one on the top, and that resets everything, which is cool. AI Smart Reframe, that's a new thing, so we'll have to just figure that out later. If you want these on or off, that's what these little switches do. So you can crop this shot, crop the left, crop the right, and if you don't want it on, you can just turn it on or off like that. These little diamonds on the side, these are keyframes. This will make it so you can animate this setting, and this goes for anything in this whole entire window and app pretty much. So if you want to animate this, say you're gonna do some super cheesy thing where you want this to start on this side, you can drop this keyframe here and drag it over there, and then create a new keyframe, which I think if you change it, it will just do, yep. And so now it will have this super cheesy moving from left to right, and those are the two keyframes we were talking about. And I think if you hop down here, hit this little keyframe, oh, maybe it's this. There it is. They changed it, that's a little different. So now we can see that here's position X, which was what we were using, where it goes from this keyframe to that keyframe. And if we select this one and delete it, now it will no longer move. Does that make sense? And if we want to put it back, we can just quickly move this over here. You'll see it creates a new keyframe. And this goes for anything besides position. This can go for this cropping feature, the speed change, all that type of stuff. And again, if we want to just get rid of it all, we can just come back up here and hit this reset button for cropping, reset button for transform, and we're back to where we were. Another really cool thing about Resolve is you can do stabilization. So if you have a shot that's a little shaky, you can literally just hit this stabilize, and it's like that fast will stabilize your shot unless it's something totally weird. And you can dial in these settings, and the stabilization works really effectively without having to go over to like After Effects or a different app to stabilize. And then there's lens correction settings. It can analyze it, or you can just kind of tell it that, you know, this lens was a little old school, had some distortion problems. You can fix it there. And then AI super scaling is like kind of like the Topaz upscaling. So if you have something that's low res, but you need it to be higher res, this will sample it and up res it the best it can. All right, that was fun. That's the inspector window. Mixer just shows you what's going on here. So if you have a bunch of audio channels, this is set up for 5.1, which is kind of weird. And then quick export, I've never used. I always use the deliver. And then there's a bunch of other settings up here, which these are different ways to like crop. You know, so say you're gonna do, when we do commercials, we shoot it on this Alexa LF because it's like a square sensor instead of long. And that way it allows us to reframe for social and for TV. And so if you're doing a version where you just want to kind of see where those frames are going to lie, that's, you know, some frame guides here. This is a way to play it back faster if your computer's having a hard time. Do you guys all know? Does anyone know? Everyone know what proxies are? Okay, so proxies, for the one or two didn't nod their heads, are basically like low res versions of the same video that's easy for your computer to handle. And then when it comes time to deliver and finalize your video, you put it back to the higher end versions that don't play back very well on your computer, but are super high quality. And those live next to each other. So if you turn on prefer proxies, it's gonna play the low res files that are really quick. And if you wanna just watch the high end, you can do prefer originals, or you can disable all proxies and force it to be originals. And it looks like there's this little tag down here. So this is, I guess we made proxies. I don't remember doing that. But it will tell you down here like HQ is the high quality and this one's the proxy. So that's what these buttons do. I don't know what this does.
That's a new
Oh yeah.
thing.
Changes your timeline settings. I think that's like auto color. And then that turns off your source window. There's a bunch of other nitty gritty stuff, but I won't bore you guys more than I already am. I'll turn off this. All right, let's see if that audio worked on that little demo we did. Okay, so we're back in this media window. I'm gonna create a new bin over here. So this is master. That means there's everything in the whole project, and it's just all out there. So I'm gonna create a bin. I'm gonna name this horror, and I'm gonna drag everything over into this horror folder. And there we have a nice little workspace, and then I'll create a new bin. This will be sync demo. And this is where I'll import the A camera and the B camera. And then I don't think that audio was working. I'm not an audio guy and I couldn't figure that out. But let's just pretend that there's nice rich waveforms in there, which there's not. Okay, so if I come back over to our edit window, you can see there's these empty sound files that I did, and then these two different angles. And if I come over here to this start time code, or here's all of our files. If I hit start time code, it will organize it by time code. And these all started at 18:30:26. We started the audio a little bit before, and then all of these we didn't use. So I'll get rid of them. So let's just say we want to take this audio, which doesn't work, but we're just going to pretend that it did. We can just quickly, well, first of all, this is what's cool about the timecode slate is if you see this timecode, it says 18:13:42:23, and if you come up here, the metadata is exactly the same. So that's pretty neat. And if you right-click all three, did they get rid of it? It used to.
No, it should still be their auto sync audio based on
Oh,
timecode.
yeah, it's a little different. It used to say.
What does it say? AI audio sync now?
It says automatically sync, but that's not automatically. Okay, so there's two ways you can sync audio. One, you can use the waveform. So we'll look at the camera audio and look at your like recording audio and say, oh, here's the peaks and valleys of this and the peaks and valleys of that. So now they're in sync. That requires a lot of processing, especially if it's like an hour-long take. And you have to have similar audio for that to work. If you're like shooting across a parking lot and they have lavs on, the camera audio is not going to hear that at all, and that will not work. They have to be fairly similar. Timecode will work if everything's synced properly. So I should hit sync, and now you can see it's pulled. The audio was named scene 3F tape 6 from the previous setup because I'm not an audio guy. You can see now that that's been assigned to this metadata, which is pretty cool. And if that audio had worked, you would have nice audio for this. And then what's also cool is it replaces the audio that was in the camera with the good audio, and it should be over here. If you scroll over,
Unless you would click the retain embedded track.
correct, yeah. So now it says synced audio, and it's pulling that waveform that's quiet. And now that's linked to this, and you no longer need this. So I always create a little bin. Why won't it let me create a bin? I call it spent files, because now it's synced. I don't need to see this ever again, so I just put all my like spent files in there. And then these two now have the right audio, and say I want to do a multicam sequence, they're already timecode synced, so I can just do create timecodes, multicam clip using selected clips. So if I click that, it's going to say, what do you want to call this? Well, this is scene 3F. And then it's going to ask me, how do I want to sync these? If I was going off the clapper, I could mark in on both clips and then say sync by the marked in. Let me just show you how to do that real quick, just so it makes sense. So if I didn't have time code and I was doing this the low-tech way, I would look for this clapper and be like, okay, right there's where it is in, so I'd mark in there. And same thing with this. And then on the audio, you would see a big peak from the, and so I'd have to come over to that audio file I was talking about earlier. Anyway, so that's marking in on both. And so if low-tech way would be create multicam sequence and sync them by in. Low-tech way, this has timecode in there, so we can do timecode, and like we talked about before, we could do sound. And then a marker is like if you drop an actual like metadata marker in there. So we're gonna do timecode, multi-camera audio. We're gonna do the source.
Is that where if you have multiple audio sources, audios, you can sync them there? Or like, I'm editing a podcast right now and I have two mics they're going, so they'd be both, I guess, high quality audio, but they're like for two different tracks.
Yeah, so you would want to sync them to the video first and then create a multicam sequence off of it. Or you could create a multicam sequence and then drop that audio in as well. But you want both the clips to have the same audio, and then when you select the camera, you don't want it to change. You just want it to be good audio. But you can set it up to when you select camera to A, it takes camera A audio to camera B audio if you want. It's just kind of how you set it up. So anyway, I can hit create, and now, now it does what I did with the audio. It creates one called original clips. Essentially is the same thing as spent. It removes those two independent audio files or video files and gives me this new multicam sequence. So now I can see both of these at the exact same time, which is pretty cool. And then if I drag that down here, now it has audio with nothing in it. And then you can record this. And then if I blade this and make two different clips, I can quickly come in and just change this camera angle by going up to switch multicam angle to 2, and now we'll switch it from this to that one, which is pretty neat. I thought I have them set up to hotkeys to where I can hit like Command 1 and 2 to change camera angles. Some other cool things about the timeline or these tools, they're very similar to Premiere. They do work a little bit different, and if you're a full-time editor, it will probably drive you crazy. If you're a new editor, it probably won't bug you that much. But like the edge, when you have this normal tool, it works pretty well. Just like you'd expect, you grab the clip and move it, you grab the edge and it goes in and out. That's, to the beginning. That's great. If you move it out of sync, it will give you this little indicator. I think you can right clip it and move it into place and it will fix it. I use the slip tool a lot. Actually, what do they call it in here? It was called slip tool in Premiere. It's this one. And this will make it so, let's just say you have this clip in the middle and you want it to just, you don't want to move the in and out, you want to move the content. That's where you'd use this tool, and you can click and drag and it will just, you can kind of see the source, the white box is moving. So I'm changing, the content a little bit, but not changing the in and out. So I use this a lot. And in Premiere, if you grab the edge and move it, it does one thing, but here, like this will just move one edge, and then if I move it out this way, actually maybe it's this side. Yeah, it does that type of stuff. And then if you move a little bit more, it does that type of stuff. So you just have to kind of learn that it's really finicky and finessey. So you, like within here to here, you see the cursor change. And if you're just used to being kind of clunky with it and just grabbing the edge and moving, you have to just get used to that, because I was ready to throw my mouse across the room, because like it's super helpful if you know what you're doing, but if it's doing it when you're trying to just move the edge like that, that's where I go crazy. So just play with it until you really understand what these little guys do. So this moves the edit left and right. In the middle, it moves the content left and right. And then at the bottom, it moves right there. It moves the whole clip next to it. So it's a little weird, but once you start learning how to do it all, it's really cool. Another cool feature is the ripple delete, which is, I guess Premiere does it too. Shift. So if I delete this clip, it fills in, it pulls in the gap, which is really neat when you're doing like a quick edit. It can mess up your sync if you're not paying attention, so you can throw everything out of sync the rest of the way. So you just got to make sure. Some of these things we didn't talk about. This is the snap tool. So once it gets kind of close, it will snap closed when that's on. So it's off right now, so I can get really close and leave it. And if this magnetic snap tool's on, as I get close to it, it will just go and stick. So that kind of helps you from doing wonky, like one frames of black.
To not mess up your sync in Premiere, you'd like hold down Shift when you're doing the
Yeah, and I think
do everything. And is there a way to cut the audio without highlighting all the audios? Instead of just in Premiere, you'd hold down Shift and hit the cut, and it would cut the video and audio.
oh, yeah, from top to bottom.
Yeah, top to bottom.
If you just like had it like you had it right now, if you just hit Command B, it'll cut everything.
So it's Command
Ah,
viewed.
yeah, like that.
Yeah, just Command B, and the Command B will cut either default, it'll just like guillotine down on your playhead.
I like
or
that.
If you have like, or if you just select one thing, like if Command B will like just select, or if you just hit B, then that'll just switch you to the blade tool.
This little link thing is, right now I can move this independent of the audio. If I hit this link, it should keep, well, if they were linked before, it would keep them all. Because I've messed it up, it won't work now. Another way to like hard link them is to select them and hit, I think, Command L. And now these all have the little link, so these are all stuck together. and then, you know, zoom in, zoom out, that type of stuff. That's pretty much it. Is there any other questions? Like, do you guys do anything in Premiere that you really wish Resolve did?
She could zoom in and out with the. I use a trackpad for everything.
Oh,
Just
I think you hit shift.
It's like it's like.
Yeah, you just hold
You can go like up and down.
like this.
That's fine. It'd just be nice.
Are you saying like up and down, like so you can see more video or more audio?
No, like
or?
zooming in and out of the timeline,
Like this?
just like that. But with Premiere, you could just do it. With
Yeah,
your,
all you do is hold down the Option key.
Yeah, you wouldn't have to hold down everything. That's
Yeah.
my one gripe about. I love DaVinci. But
You
that's
might
my
be able-
There might be a
one
way to
thing.
map that.
Yeah. So that's another thing to talk about. And then Shift does this; it makes it taller or shorter. These have keyboard customizations, and this is it works just like Premiere, where you can either like type in the key and it will show you what it does, or you can come in here and search for it, and you can program it your own way. So let's just say zoom. What was it? It was Shift up. I probably won't do it. Anyway, you could come in here, and this would be a timeline.
Same thing, but you have to put.
Is it just plus and minus on yours?
I have it set up to control plus and minus, which was a
Okay.
Final Cut 7, where all my
That's what I default map mine to as well.
yeah. Up here it says my name, but you can also do DaVinci Resolve, Premiere Pro. So if you use a Premiere Pro keys, you can just switch it. Pro Tools, Final Cut. So anyway, that's that. Okay, Fusion I'm going to skip over because, like I said, I don't really understand it. It is neat. And then color is the other big thing. That's obviously what people use Resolve for. Editing is super fast, super great. I can't recommend it enough. But color is really where Resolve shines. And the way you'd want to do this is to do, where are my LUTs? Like a Rec 709 LUT. So this is Canon. I think we shot like that, right? So that would be kind of like more what you'd expect to see on TV. LUTs to me are something you make and put in a camera. If you want to emulate a look, LUTs to me are not something you do in post. But sometimes people have skills to make something look really cool, and they just sell it to you. And if that works for you, cool. I like to do everything custom, and that's where this really comes into play. So let me just go over how you can color quickly. Much like the editing window, there's these different things we can look at. So we have like a gallery of stills, and this is like stuff from other shoots, where you can save a look and apply it to other shots. This is really good for if you correct one camera and that shot's later on, you want it to be exactly the same. You save all your looks in here and just apply them. And then if you hover over, it kind of shows you what it's going to look like. So these are basically your LUTs. These are the standard LUTs that come with like camera. These are like the technical ones. So by default, Resolve comes with some LUTs for different types of manufacturers like Sony and Canon, Arri, Blackmagic. Like all those LUTs are in here, and you can kind of see, it gives you kind of a look here how it's gonna affect. So like this is more of like a bleach bypass look, and this is more of a desaturated look. And like I was saying before, they don't really work for my footage. I mean, you can see it's changing it, and that's neat. But like, I like to do everything from scratch. This was shot on Arri, so if I come to Arri log C to Rec 709, I can apply that LUT, and that's looking pretty good. But again, I want to make it my own. So up here is where you can see your gallery, your LUTs, media pool. I really don't know why you'd use that in here, because usually in color you have your edit finished and locked off, so you just kind of want to go in and start making it look the best. I don't know why you'd go back and look for source stuff, but you can, I guess. And then this clips down here shows these little thumbnails. So these are all the different clips in my timeline. So if I come back here and delete all this stuff. Now they're gone. Now it's just these two shots. And yeah. So if you want a little more screen real estate, you can get rid of that. And then same thing with this timeline over here. These are the two clips. And then it'll have your different video tracks. So if I had multiple video tracks, they would show up here. Let me just show you what that looks like. So if this was like above that, you can now see that that's what it looks like. And you can turn that over here off over here with timeline. So if you really want to maximize your real estate, you can just turn both of those off. I like to kind of see where things are going. Over here is effects. Now these effects are completely different than the effects in the edit session. And it seems weird to me, but there's a lot of really cool effects in here that aren't available in the edit because they're kind of different apps. Some really cool ones are like the film emulations are really powerful and really cool. As you can see, I overlapped those and now that looks really stupid. So I'm gonna move it back. You can come up here and search. And then once you've applied those effects, you can modify them. And we'll go over that in a minute. Nodes. In Adobe, everything's done by layers like Photoshop. So the higher the layer, you know, is how the hierarchy moves as you move nodes, or sorry, you move the layers around. In Resolve, everything is done by nodes, and nodes are kind of more like a pathway than it is a hierarchy. So if I just create a new color node, it shows up here, and then I can make adjustments, and then I can make a new node. So say I want to make one node that does just exposure to get it into the exposure all the same for all my shots. And then say I want to make another node that then gives me the look I want. So that could be here. And then, so now I can go through and color correct everything to the exposures correctly. And then I can just assign the look I want. And then say I want to do some other fine tweaking, I could do another node. And then you can start doing effects and like color isolations. You can go crazy. And like a professional colorist you look at their nodes and you'll be like, that dude is insane. But you can start, you know, assigning where these go and split them and merge them back together, and you can get nuts. And I'm not that spicy with my color correction. So that's your node window. We talked about timeline, talked about effects. Let's just talk about these color settings. So I'm going to go back to, let me just import a shot real quick.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
So when you had the two kind of images and the lines going between them, sorry, this is
No, go for it.
on the color page.
The nodes?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
What are those lines kind of indicating, or what?
Let me get some footage in there. Let me find the shot, then we'll talk about it. Thank you for asking. This was from a camera test earlier today, just for some friends. Okay, so this was shot on these cameras in a light RAW, not the full-fledged RAW. Oh, I put them in the horror folder. Okay, so here's these three angles. I'm just going to drop them in here. Am I going to drop them in there?
I think you somehow.
Oh, I unselected that.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's another thing. If you only want to do audio, like you hit this little button and it will only do the audio. And if you only want to do video, that will only let you do video. This is helpful if you have a bunch of different audio tracks and you don't want to mess up one or one video track. You can also lock the video tracks, but sometimes that will happen. You'll be like, what is going on? Also, since this clip has audio and video, you'll see now there's a little tab down here, and it's kind of the same thing. So I have this in my viewer. These guys are just walking around. Say I want just the video. I just click this video guy and drag it down. And on the flip side, if I only want the audio for some reason, I can just drag that down. And if I want both, I just grab the clip. So I'm going to do all three. I didn't mark in and out, so this is just what it is. But the reason I'm grabbing these is because these are raw, and Down here is where we'd make this little camera raw setting. So this is like your primary color wheels, which is where you do most of your color correction. But before you get started, if you have raw, this is where you can come in and change your camera settings, much like a photograph. And you have to shoot in raw for this to be accessible. So if you're shooting like in an H.264 or an MXF that's not raw, or a ProRes or something that's not raw, you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. But if it's raw, you can come in here and change it. So this is going to ask me how I want to decode this. And so for Canon, I can decode it full res, half res, or quarter res, and that's going to change my playback ability. So if my computer's having a hard time playing this back in full res, I can do half res or quarter res, and that's just going to take it from like a 4K, half res would be 2K, and quarter res would be 1K, essentially. This is saying full res Resolve, full res Canon. Resolve has built their own interpretation of how to decode this. And it's a lot more for Canon. It's a lot more efficient to do the Resolve version. It plays back much smoother than the Canon version. However, the Canon version gives you a few more controls to fine tune how to interpolate this footage. Doesn't really matter. I'm just going to do Resolve for now. Man, there's so much stuff to get into. I could geek out. I'm going to try not to. You can, in your project setting, you can tell it how you want to handle raw footage. Here, I'll just show you real quick. So here's a project under camera raw. We can say Canon raw is what we're dealing with. So by default, we want it all to be full res Resolve, but if we're having a hard time, we can change it to something else. And then do you want to decode using like default, or do you want to look at the metadata? So this is saying like, do you want to look at the metadata for white balance or for ISO, or do you want everything to be set to a project standard? So if I want to say, I want everything to be 5600K and everything to be this ISO, maybe you're shooting on a stage and it didn't change. Otherwise, I would never use this. So I always do camera metadata because I figure the DP and crew knew what they were doing. But if you want to set it up for the whole entire project, you change this to project, and then you can change that here, and that will affect every instance of that raw throughout the whole entire project, which we're not going to do. So we'll leave that there. So down here, we can say, how do we want to decode this by clip instead of doing it how we set up in the project. So if I do camera metadata, if I do clip, then it allows me to change this by clip. So if I want to change to Rec 709, which is this TV standard, it looks nice and colorful. This is Rec 2020 is like HD, R, so is P3, they're different types. And then Canon Cinema Gamut is the camera's own type of color space. And then these are the different types of logs. So there's Rec 709. So if I change both these to Rec 709, it looks like that. I overexposed this on purpose because we were doing a camera test. So let's just say we shot this in C-Log 2. Because I'm using the Resolve, it won't let me change the ISO, the Resolve decode. I think if I change this to Canon, yeah, now it will let me change the ISO if I want to make it darker or brighter. Like I said, if you select Resolve, your playback will work a lot better, but you lose that functionality, which isn't that big of a deal. Then here's our color temp, so I can change this to be like whatever. We were outside, so 5600K is the white balance we'd want. If we were shooting under fluorescent lights or something, the tint was weird, you could adjust that here, which doesn't really show up, but it is changing very subtly, a little more green. Exposure, I would recommend changing the ISO, but if you don't want to, you could change it here. Anyway, this allows you to make all the fine adjustments to the raw footage before you bring it in. So this is a Macbeth chart reader. If you have a little Macbeth chart that you take on set, you can like take a photo of it and then use this to read the chart, and it'll automatically calibrate based off of these proper colors. They will say like, you know, top right is this color of brown exactly, and it will look at your lighting and say, oh, this should be over here, and it will automatically color correct your footage to be precise if you want. It is effective, it's not perfect, and you have to remember to do it in every setup you do. So
Just work with a gray card, or do you have?
No.
You have to have either the X-Rite or the.
Yeah. There's these different types of Macbeth charts you can buy. So this one's the Spider Checker 24. Here's like the X-Rite. They make little pocket ones and then they make huge ones. Obviously, the huge ones are going to be far more effective than the smaller ones because there's more data. Because even though that it has the color, there's going to be gradient from lighting. So if you have more area to sample, anyway, I used to use this all the time, and then I finally was just like, I'm just going to do it my own way. Here's the primary color correcting tools. They're really small on this monitor. I have a big wide monitor at home, so it's a lot easier. And then there's the HDR version. Unless you guys are doing HDR, I really wouldn't mess with this because it's super granular and you need to have an HDR monitor to really kind of see what it's doing. This is more of the RGB mixer. I don't use this particularly, but some people like it, I guess. And then here's all your noise reduction settings, which if you have like super grainy footage, this can really fix a lot of problems. But you probably won't have grainy footage because cameras are awesome now. And you shouldn't shoot in the dark. Okay, so let's just go here because this is where most of the magic's going to happen. And these are really small interfaces here, and it's really hard to do on a trackpad. It's hard to do on a mouse. If you want to get into color, there's that unit over there, which is like $3,000 or $2,000 with tariffs. I don't know how much it is now. I bought this one for $400. This is great for my little setup. So instead of trying to like move this little guy, a couple pixels to make it do whatever you can, it's very more tactile and easier to kind of just manipulate this. This was 400 and something when I bought it. I think it's 600 now, thanks to tariffs. Yeah. Okay, and then if you have an iPad version of Resolve, which is not like this at all, it's really a light version. It doesn't handle all the codecs. Like it won't do these airy files. But you can put your iPad in there and color. It's really cool. So this one over here is your lift, gamma, gain, and offset. And lift is basically your blacks, gamma is basically your grays, gain is basically your whites, and offset's everything. So if I want to take, here's like my waveform monitor. So this, I like to use this guy. This combines the red channel, green channel, and blue channel on top of each other, and when they're all perfectly aligned, it turns white. And then this is my, this is set up for, all right, this is the color space we're in. There's different types of color spaces, and we're not going to get into that tonight. But Rec 709 is basically your standard standard dynamic range, which old TVs were, and web kind of is, unless you have unless it's different. 4K TVs have a bunch of different color spaces and standards, but those are usually P3, Rec 2020 are kind of like the color spaces that TVs use and cameras ingest, and then you can export those into like Dolby Vision or HDR10. There's all these different ways to interpolate the information that the camera sees. What we're going to talk about tonight is the most basic, which is Rec 709. It's pretty much 90% or more of what people are making at our level is Rec 709. Are you delivering in HDR?
Only for fun.
Yeah.
All my clients are all
Yeah.
Rec 709 web deliverable.
Yeah. Yeah. Same thing. Like I did this in HDR just to look at it on my TV and go, wow, those candles are really popping.
Wow,
Yeah.
spent all that money.
And so if you guys aren't following what we're talking about, the standard Rec 709, like black is here, white is here, and anything above or below that is just gone, and there's not a lot of steps in between. And then when we go to HDR, the blacks get darker and the brights get way brighter. So when you color correct, you can't color correct for Rec 709 and plop it on this other TV. It's going to expand it and it's going to look great, but it's not going to be specifically dialed in to what you might want it to be. And with HDR10, that's like what Netflix kind of used to use. They probably do Dolby Vision now. It's more of like think of it more open source. Everyone can use it. And the for every TV out there, there's what's called nits, and that's how bright the TV can go, and your range. And so the higher end TVs go super bright, and they have a higher nit range. And so every show you color correct, you create a different master for those different TVs. So Netflix will be like, oh, this TV's this bright, so we're going to show you this version of the color correction, and the TV that's 3,000 nits will show you this version of. And so the TVs are really smart with the player to kind of give you the best viewing experience possible. And what Dolby Vision does is it does it per shot. So every shot has its own little sidecar color correction file for your TV. So Dolby Vision's wild. It's like super precise, but you have to have training certification, and you have to have encoders to make it. I think you can do it here, but it's
again, you need all the licenses.
you need all the things.
You need their physical box.
Yeah. And then I think they have to certify it after you do it.
Correct.
So we're not going to talk about that for sure tonight. And then Rec 709 is just watch it. So what we're looking at here on the bottom right is scopes. And so 0 is black, and 123 is our highest white point. And if I change this over to what it was, to HDR ST 2084, you'll see 1023 is now like down here. And then you have all this extra room, and same thing, you have all this extra room down here. So that's what HDR is. There's like so much more information to handle. And you need a camera that can shoot all that range too. So most modern cameras can handle that. This Arri definitely can. Okay, so if we know 0 is black, 1023 is white, we can look at this footage, which you call log footage. And log footage is what we're looking at, where the blackest black is a dark gray and the brightest bright's a light gray. There's no white, there's no black. It just looks like what you'd call milky. And that's what log is. And when I see it on TV, I want to scream. So without further ado, lift is this guy over here. If you drag this to the left, it will lower our lift or our blacks down to where it's looking pretty good. So with this cool controller, I can like hit play, stop, rewind. And then these wheels on my hands are it's everything but the offset wheel. So I have my lift, which is my blacks over here. And if I spin this outer wheel, it's much like this bottom wheel. Middle wheel is this, same thing. And then the colors are, if I want to make my blacks like more red, I'll push it up that way, and I can reset that. So let's just say I want to make this look good, not milky. So I'll lower the blacks to where about I hit the bottom there, right? And if I go further, I'm losing stuff. So you don't really want to go past the bottom. And then our whitest whites, I can go all the way up to where it starts to overexpose there, but that looks like absolute crap. So we're not going to do that. So let's just say maybe right there. And now the mids are a little bright, so I can just bring them down like so. Okay. So now all of a sudden we're looking a lot better. Where's my mouse? I don't have a mouse. If I turn on the nodes, we can quickly A/B this guy, and you can see like that's where we were, that's where we are now. That's a pretty good start. And so that's kind of how this all works here. In the raw, we can change the color temperature by dialing in, 5600K for daylight, 3200K for tungsten. If you don't have raw, you can just make it warmer or cooler by dragging this little guy. So cooler, warmer. Same thing with tint over here. Contrast, if you drag these over, so let's just say I want to make the blacks a little more red, I can drag this over, like that. And if I want to make the white stuff behind her a little more blue, I come over here to my gain and drag it to the right, and I'll do that on this panel. So now that's looking a little more blue, right? And so that's kind of what these do at a high level. And if you want to just reset one of these, you can hit this one, and it will reset one by one. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to this and just set my levels to where I want the exposure to be, kind of like that. And if I want to give it more style, I can create a new node, which should be on this board, but I don't remember where it is. Add node, boop. Okay, so now I can make even further adjustments. So let's say I want to make the black of her dress pure black and not red. There's a couple of different ways we can do this, but these tools over here are super, super powerful. And I'll just go over them real quick. This is curves. This is just kind of more exposure stuff. Again, if you want to reset it, it's right here. These are different types of isolations you can do. So this is like hue versus hue, hue versus saturation, hue versus luma. Luma is like black to white, luma to saturation, so black to saturation. So if I want to like desaturate just the blacks, I can click this area and pull down that saturation in the darks. Do you see that happening? Or boost it? So that's kind of what you'd use that for. Saturation versus saturation, and saturation versus luma. So this is kind of the same thing where you can adjust. It just gives you lots of granular control. Hue versus saturation. So what this is going to say is these are my color spaces, my hues, and let's say I want to desaturate the blues. You can see right here that there's a lot of blue. I can grab this, and that's going to take the blue out of that window, right? So that's one way you could do it, is you could come over and desaturate the blacks, just super easy, stuff like this. But that takes out all the blacks, which I kind of don't want to do. So I'm just going to reset this. Another cool feature, I've never used the color slice, or these are both kind of new, so I'm not super hip on those. But this one's super powerful, and you can use it all the time. This is called the qualifier, and this is a way to isolate very select colors. So if someone's wearing like a green screen colored shirt, you can select that shirt and change the color. You can select someone's skin tone and change it to make them look a little more tan or a little less red. If there's a blown out window in the background, you can select just the window, and I'll just kind of show you how it works. So let's just say I want to select this window back here. I can click on it, and if I hit this button, it shows me what I'm selecting. So I can select just this color of blue, and that's what I'm going to be able to change over here. And if I want to clean it up, I can hit like this plus to add more colors to it, minus, or I can feather it and make it softer with these tools. And then if I want to swap it, this swaps what I'm selecting. Down here, this is the range of hue. So if we want to make this a little bit wider, we can hit this, and that's going to select more of the blue, but we start getting into that black. This is the saturation, so how much color do we want to select? And then this is the luminance, how much dark or light we want to select. And again, we can like lower this, but there's nothing really more. I guess there is there on the edge. And these are some ways you can kind of just dial in what you're selecting. And then where it really becomes powerful is these clean black and clean white. So you can see there's some dancing pixels here. If I hit play, you can just see it's kind of dancing. I can clean up the black by just dragging this over, and it'll kind of blur it and kind of figure out what I want. So you can kind of clean that up a little bit. You can blur it. And this is kind of a bad example of this technology, but it becomes super powerful the more you use it. So now you can see what I have selected. Let's just say I want to make those windows super blue. We can look here and say, okay, these are kind of like a lower area. So I can now just drag these over to like that. And now those windows are super blue. I can darken just the windows or lighten them a lot more. And because my selection's kind of crude, you can see it's falling apart a little bit. So you need to be careful, but it is pretty neat. If I had some other footage, I could probably show you better. But again, you can keep making all sorts of nodes and start selecting stuff. So let's just say I want to make her dress a little less colorful. I can select just this dress. There's not a lot of information there because it's such a dark scene. Never mind. But if you come down here, you can see these are wiggling as I move. And if you want the blacks to be pure black, you can just kind of overlap them to be white in this waveform. So that looks a little green to me, but anyway, I should probably get better footage to mess with. Here, this will be good. Okay, so again, you can do LUTs to kind of, this is C-Log 2, it's milky, it's overexposed by design. It's because I used a LUT I made, which is this one, nope, C-Log, yeah. We're gonna apply this LUT, and that's kind of the LUT I was shooting for. Is that still playing over here?
Yeah.
Okay. So that LUT just puts it right into range where it's supposed to be. It's super crispy, it looks great, and then I can take that and add a node and then dial it in more if I'd like, or I can start from scratch. So let's just say I want to dial this in some more. I can recover, I can pull this back up, right? So now my blacks aren't totally black. Down here I didn't talk about, but are the saturations right here. So if you want to make it black and white, you just get rid of your saturation. Trying to find like a cool color to isolate. So let me show you how to do this from log. So you just take this down, take that up. Log needs more color, so you just give it some color. And pretty soon we're looking pretty good. I wish they were wearing like a bright colored shirt. But the blue in his shirt is pretty unique. So what we can do is create a new node. Use this qualifier and hit this blue, and nothing happens because I'm not viewing it. So now that we come over here, you can see if you push and hold, it keeps collecting. So now we got all of this blue, which is super great. And say we don't want to see this guy, we can come over here, and this is your mask tool, and we can just do a crude pen drawing, just like this. And this will just only affect the stuff that's inside of this. This is good if you want to do like gradients or whatnot. And again, you can adjust like the softness, the size. Okay, so now we're just affecting this area, and you can kind of see over here what we're doing. And now we want to change this blue to a different hue. We can come over here to our hue, and you can see now we can change the color of his shirt to like green. So if you have a client who's like, he should have been wearing the green shirt. And you can see, yeah, here, right here, the I didn't do the mask around his arm. Come back over here. I can add.
Where one of those new
Yeah, the new AI.
tools would be useful, but
I don't know how to use that.
yeah, no, I'm just saying that generally.
Yeah, these are super crude examples. I should have spent more time figuring out some good footage. But this is also really good at tracking. So if I hit Command T, it'll track it like that, which isn't a great example. Anyway, these are all the tools. I'll let you guys play with it because it's getting kind of late. Okay, so the theater format is DCP. I think it's a digital cinema package is what it stands for. Nowadays, you can hook up a USB drive, but the problem is they're really slow. So there's a couple things to consider. The digital cinema package isn't one file, it's a package. And in that package is a folder structure of different subtitles, what region you're in, like how is this, is it a commercial, is it a feature film, is it a something else? And all of that needs to be done correctly. And also the resolutions of those are not standard resolutions. It's not like 1080p, it's not 720p, it's a digital cinema package. And to do that, you just come in here, you need to make sure that your timeline's set up correctly. So if we come into timelines, and like I said before, you can't change the frame rate, so you gotta make sure that's set up correctly. So let's just say this is DCP. If we come into timeline settings, here's our format. Can you guys still see this okay?
Yeah.
And this is pulling it down from our project settings. So if we uncheck that, it will allow us to make a custom timeline. There's different types of formats for film, and these are the two here, DCI flat and DCI scope. And what that is flat is close to a 16:9 and scope is close, or it's 239. So if you shot like an anamorphic film where it's like really widescreen, you'd want to put it into DCI scope, and that's not to be confused with anamorphic de-squeezing and whatnot. So these are the two primary, like everything in Utah is going to be these two. There are 4K versions of this, but I don't think there's any 4K screens in Utah. Yeah. So you want to stick with DCI flat or DCI scope. I think you can do DCI just straight up, but I have never done that. It's always been these two. And it needs to be tagged that way for the system to read it right. Okay, so let's just say this is a DCI flat. So you create this timeline. Let's just drag in this shot just for fun. So now you'll see that there's a little tiny black letterboxing at the bottom because it's not crossover to 16:9. It's a little bit different. So what we can do is we can, in these settings, there's different ways to handle misaligned. We can either center crop with no resizing, and so this is a 5.9K, so it's like a 6K image. So if I select center crop with no resizing, it's going to show me pixel for pixel. So basically it's going to zoom in quite a bit. So if I hit that, hit OK, now it's zoomed into the middle, right? So that's what you'd see on the screen, and that's not really going to work for us. It's kind of a bummer that we're used to 4K HDR at home, and then we go to the theater and it's 2K, not HDR. It's just, it's a little bit better than Rec 709, but not much. Okay, so timeline settings, that's center crop with no resizing. If you go scale, full frame with crop, that will lob off the sides a little bit, so there's no black bar at the bottom. And I think I could show you by going to this inspector. See, as I zoom out, the little bit from the sides comes back. So that's what that does, is it just went like that. And that will do that to every shot that you bring in, no matter what it is, it will automatically detect. So that's probably the right way to do it if you want a full screen. I personally I would probably edit in 1080p to keep things lickety split, and then I would probably make the highest master I could, which would be like a 4K HDR. And then I would probably bring that into here. Maybe not the HDR master, but I'd bring in that timeline and then scale it down. So I'll put this back to, yeah, full crop. Okay, so let's just say this is your home movie. This is where you would want to make sure it's set up correctly for the theater. This would be 2K flat, scope would be super widescreen. Another thing to consider is your sound mix. And so for that, you would get what are called stems from your sound guy. And if you're doing a 5:1 mix, that's your dialogue, then your front left, your front right, your back left, your back right, and your LFE, which is your subwoofer. And then all of those need to be added in here as tracks. And yeah, as mono tracks. So if you look down here, this is a stereo track, meaning it has left and right. We can delete that track. So you'd want to come down here and create. It's confusing because you can do this 5:1 film, but this is a 5:1 film all in one track, and you don't want to do that for a DCP. You want it all to be separate. So you got to come in here and create 6 different tracks. And I don't remember off the top of my head what order they need to be in. You can look it up online. There's like tutorials. But basically it would be like, I think it's, what do they call dialogue?
And do you need to do them like in specific order?
Yes, you do.
So like wherever they use it in theaters will recognize it?
Yeah, well, it's the DCP standard, yeah. So it's the dialogue, and then it's like left, right, you know. And I was gonna do a cheat sheet for myself, but let's just say it's left rear. I always have to look it up before I do it because I want it to be right. I don't memorize it. Right rear, and then usually it's like LFE, which is your subwoofer. LFE, and then you get these these files from your sound mixer, or if you do it yourself, you got to bounce them down to each track. My project's set up for 5.1 right now. So then you got to come into Fairlight, and this is where it gets kind of weird. You have to assign all these to a bus, and I don't know how to do that off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. But once all that's set up correctly, and even if I did tell you how to do it right now, I doubt anyone would retain it. So sorry. Then you come up here to there should be a DCP. Did they get rid of it? Okay, so you have to do it from custom. So let's just say like my DCP. You'd want to render a single clip. Let's see, you come down here to DCP, right? And this is going to change all these settings that we're used to. I think this is the one we use. So a DCP isn't a video file. It's actually a string of JPEG images. So every frame is a JPEG. And it's in a really funky color space called XYZ. So if you looked at an XYZ color space on your computer, it would look like weird colors. But that's how the projector interprets it. It looks like they have support for HDR now, which I don't think any theaters in Utah do. This is where you need to select the right flavor. So DCI flat. This is the bit rate of the compression for those JPEGs. I think 250 is the max. You can lower it if you want your file size of your DCP to be smaller. I don't know why you'd ever want to do that because you're showing it in a theater, so you want it to be as high quality as possible. So I just wouldn't touch that. And I don't think I'd touch any of this other stuff because it looks, even though it's 2K in a theater, somehow it just looks amazing. Pixel aspect ratio, square pixel is going to be like pixel shaped like this, which is what you'd see on the web. If it's anamorphic, meaning you shot it on an anamorphic glass, it will squeeze it down into that pixel. And when you project it in the theater, you got to unsqueeze it. So that's what CinemaScope would be.
So like it will save how you shot it, meaning like, okay, and then it will unsqueeze in the theater again.
Yeah. Data levels, I would leave that on auto, full, would probably work. And then the color space, I don't know if you have to change this. So like we were talking before with the ASIS workflow and whatnot, when you set up your project, you kind of need to know like, hey, is this going to be used for something specific, or is this going to be used for something in the future? Is this going to be used for HDR? The ASIS color workflow is, you could probably spend a week talking about it, but it's a very scientific way of understanding how color works and maintaining the most purest form of the data from the camera throughout the whole post-process timeline until delivery, because the way it's delivered, like I was talking about with the TVs, it's delivered in this milky format, and then the TV itself interpolates that and presents it to the viewer. So you're not making, like if I take a 4K HDR Blu-ray and rip it and pull it into Resolve, it looks like this. It looks milky, and there's all this data to manipulate it. So the ASIS color workflow is maintaining the purest form of that ingestion throughout the whole pipeline. So when people are doing special effects, they're slapping LUTs on and looking at it on different types of monitors, and they're basically making milky effects. Or most people send it to a production house that specializes in making DCPs. Another thing to really keep in mind is having your DCP audio the right level, and that's something that your sound mixer needs to make sure is done correctly, because theaters are mixed really, really quiet, whereas TV's mixed really loud, and web's mixed super loud. So if you take a web file and put it in a movie theater, and if the projectionist doesn't know what's up, you'll probably blow their speakers in everyone's ears in the theater. So yeah, anyway. And then all this is like the tagging, like how you would classify it. So this is, this is a feature film, and You just gotta go through and make sure it's all set up correctly, because when they put it into their theater system, it's like an old DOSy looking thing, and they can't. Yeah. I haven't done this in a minute, and I meant to research it more and do a refresher course. Here's the most important part. A USB drive's fine, but if you want it to work guaranteed, the file format for the drives in theaters are X2 or exFAT2. It's ext2. So Macs won't read that. If you plugged in the ext drive to a Mac without special software, it would be like, this drive needs to be formatted. And so if you do have a DCP on a proper drive, like, don't just hand it out to people, because they'll be like, oh, I need to format this, and then your movie's gone. So ext2, so you gotta download a special app like Paragon or something to be able to, once you make that, put it on an ext2 drive, and that way the projection system will read it natively. If you can do FAT32, but then you run into file format limits of like 4 gigabytes or something. There's a program that you can download, and it will look at your DCP, validate that it's formatted correctly. It will look at your hard drive that you're going to transfer it to. It will monitor the transfer, verify that the transfer happened correctly, and then it will verify that DCP will play correctly. Let me turn these around and let you guys play, and if you have questions,